computer. Okay, we are now recording this, our last section in regard to this course. I want to talk about the issue of leadership. And in the midst of this, in communication, I want to talk about the issue of sacrifice and suffering. Sacrifice and suffering isn't often thought about in the realm of communication, but well, it should. Because if you ever take a role of leadership, as a parent, you're a leader. If you're involved in a church, you might be a leader. You're involved in a business, you're a leader. In some dimension, you may find yourself as a parent or as a family setting or in other small group setting or in business setting, you will likely find yourself at some point being a leader. In fact, as we all exude leadership and give leadership at different moments. But if you're in an official position of leadership, you need to understand that there's a major thing that you have to deal with, and that is the reality that you have to sacrifice and that you do experience levels of suffering. That simply goes with the territory of living life. Now, I know that most people say they don't want to suffer, and I understand that. But it is a reality that we experience, that we actually experience the realm of suffering. And it can be stress just from worrying about something to being attacked by attitudes by other people. And sometimes you find yourself saying to yourself, why, Lord, why? Why am I experiencing this realm of suffering? I have been described as a person that has experienced a great deal of suffering. I taught a course, a section of a course in leadership at a master's level. There were 12 major topics. And the professor who was the who had oversight of the course, he taught 7 of the 12 sections. And he had 5 sections where he invited 5 different professors to come in and teach one section. So we'd be there for 2 hours or 2.5 hours and teach this section. And he kept giving the other professors, like he'd give them different topics, but he kept giving me the same one. And I went to him and I said, Ron, I was just inquisitive why you keep giving me the same one. And he said, well, Curtis, it is because you are the most qualified person to teach about sacrifice and suffering. And there's no way I'm going to change it. The students prefer hearing you teach on this. And the reason he shared that is because literally, I in leadership have experienced a great deal of sacrifice and suffering. In fact, if I start sharing it with you, you look at me like you can't be telling the truth. And it is all true. Interesting. This course that was taught in a 1-week course in late August to the early first few days of September before the fall semester began at a master's level on the campus at Trinity Western. And I came in to teach my section on sacrifice and suffering. And Ron, the professor he's not there now, but was over all the leadership courses, was sitting there. He sat in through all the sections of the 5 of us, and then he did his 7. As I was teaching this to these students, I became very much aware that I actually was more teaching Ron in this moment. You see, earlier that month in August, he lost one of his sons in a car accident. In fact, both sons and their wives were in the car driving to a city in Calgary, the province next door. And a drunk driver came into their lane in the highway and smashed and killed the one son whose wife was pregnant with their first baby. And as I'm sitting there and I'm teaching my students this, I'm very much aware that Ron's sitting in the room and 3, maybe 4 weeks earlier, his son had been killed. And that was a very sobering moment. Reality is that if you're going to be in leadership, you're going to experience sacrifice and suffering. Here's a poem. Sacrifice and suffering. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal. Oh, here, this is a, sorry, this isn't a poem. This is from the scripture. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. 2 Corinthians 4, 17, 18. Here's the poem. Robert Browning Hamilton wrote this. I walked a mile with pleasure. She, pleasure, chattered all the way, but left me none the wiser for all she had to say. I walked a mile with sorrow, and ne'er a word said she, but oh, the things I learned from her when sorrow walked with me. Reality is that we all in life will experience sorrow, struggle, suffering. Yesterday I received an email, and then today I received a backup email from a man that I know, and his grandson, 7 years old, this morning was going in for open heart surgery. 7 years old, open heart surgery. And it would be about a 6 or 7 hour operation. And he wrote, and I just read it about an hour ago, that his grandson came through it very well and was doing well. So a little 7-year-old can experience open heart surgery. We all know the suffering is something that can happen to every one of us. I want to give you a stress test. And what I want to do is I want to show you a picture. And it's a picture of two dolphins jumping out of the water. They're jumping out of the water, okay? Now, they look exactly the same. But if you see even one little difference between the two dolphins as you're looking at this picture, then you're under a lot of stress and you probably should go on vacation. So are you ready? I'm going to show you the picture of these two dolphins jumping in the water. If you see one that looks different than the other one, then you're under a lot of stress. A dolphin and a cow. And if you see that cow and you don't see a dolphin, you're under some stress. We all know what stress is about. Stress results reality is that we all experience certain levels of stress. Leadership communication challenge related to the issue of just leadership itself. If you're called to leadership, if you're part of an organization, you have different dimensions of reality in regard to stress and the challenge of communicating well in an organization, which brings on stress. First, one area in organizations, you need to have a purpose and you need to be able to communicate that purpose with clarity. And when that happens, good things happen. And in any organization, you always have a mission. This is what we as an organization are about. You have a vision. This is what we are going forward to achieve in fulfilling the vision, the mission. And you have values that are important. And the values must be upheld as you strive to see the vision met and the mission fully achieved. And so leadership communication is so critical in always clarifying, this is our purpose, this is our purpose, this is our purpose, this is our mission, this is our mission, this is our mission. Here is our vision this year. Here's our vision. Here's our vision. Here are the values we hold to all the time. All the time we hold to these values. I go to a dentist, and I, like everybody who goes to a dentist, I have my teeth cleaned and I have cavities taken care of and all that sort of stuff. And they have on their wall a mission statement. And their mission statement is to bring about excellence in dental work so that all their patients are thoroughly well taken care of. And they have it beautifully stated in a mission statement. And then they have a vision. A vision is the bigger picture of what could be. And the vision is that we will not ever end up dealing with problems that could have been solved through meeting with our dentist. And they have values. Their values are that the customer comes first, that the patient comes first, that the well-being of the patient comes first, that the comfort of the patient comes first, that the patient will always be communicated with, that they will always treat us with respect, that they will always be kind to us. We are why they exist. And so they hold us with these values. And by the way, because I teach this, I've quietly observed, and what they say on paper on the wall, or not on paper, but on a little plaque on the wall, is what they actually carry out. It's actually done. And so leadership communication means you have to have a solid purpose. What is your purpose of life? When you're a parent, what is your purpose? In marriage, what is your purpose? In your friendships, what are your purpose? In regard to you being a student, what is your purpose? What are you about? And if you don't ever clarify that, there's a time when you look back and say, I wasted lots of my life. And you don't want to do that, because that's not a fun experience. There's not just a leadership communication challenge. It's not just about the issue of purpose, but when you're working with people, you deal with an organization, and each person in the organization has personality, and every person becomes a part of creating the organizational personality. It's two critical things in regard to leadership related to the person. It's helping them have a self-awareness of who they are and what they can become. And to have a situational fit. Do they fit this organization well? We have an organization in British Columbia called Vancity Credit Union. And Vancity Credit Union, of course, has employees, and they have people who apply for work there. And if you were to apply there, one of the things you have to do is not only fill out an application, but you have to give references. That shouldn't surprise you. So the organization can check you out, and they do. And when they check you out, they write down all the information of the person that they interview, and they analyze that. And they've come to this conclusion that past performance is the best indicator of future behavior. Or to say it the other way around, past behavior is the best indicator of future performance. And so what they're looking for is to see, are you aware of yourself and aware of the quality that you should be bringing to the organization? Because if you are not, then you don't fit this situation here at all. And when they do that, they have people that they check out, and they find out that they were a problem person in the past. That means there'll be a problem person in the future, likely. They're a person who did excellent work. There'll be a person who will do excellent work in the future. So what you were like in the past is very much an indicator of what you'll be like in the future. And good communication is always trying to understand, to ensure the right people come into an organization. They have the right personality, the right credentials, the right interests of the organization at heart. Because if they don't, then it's better not to have you as part of the organization. And so a lot of communication goes on even before you become a part of that organization. A lot of checking you out, et cetera, to make sure you're a proper fit. The third is performance. So leadership communication is concerned about the purpose, always being upfront, that the right personalities are in place. And they're concerned about performance, that people are a good fit and that they're able to perform well. There's a culture that they want to create within any organization. and it's communicated over and over and over again. We are about, comes back to vision and mission and values. This is what our culture is to be. We are a caring people. My dentist office know me by name. They are very courteous. They take care of me. They communicate well. They make sure that I have no discomforts. They make sure that everything was perfectly set for the procedures that they have to do in regard to my mouth and my oral hygiene performance being excellent. So they really go out of their way to do a great job. That the culture of the organization is important, and it has to be communicated. This is what we're about, and this is how we operate. Strategy and achievement. There's always a strategy that is a set up so that you keep growing and developing as an organization, as an individual in the organization. What education can we make sure you have so you keep developing, so you become even more equipped to do the job we want you to be doing? We're not here just to take advantage of you because you have skills. We want to pour into you more education and preparation. And so your performance needs to grow with the culture as it grows, and that helps to achieve the mission vision of the church, of the organization, of this dental office, of wherever it happens to be. And then they want to effect change. They want you to be a growing person. And that means always communicating our mission, our vision, our values, always being aware of our awareness of how well we fit and what is expected of us, what our culture is about, the strategies that we use and to achieve that so that you become even more effective in the process of change. The reality is that all of us change. Change is something you cannot avoid, but we want positive change versus negative change. And then ultimately, leadership communication challenge is not just about purpose, just about personality, just about performance, but it's about people, because people really are the persona, and they're the ones that achieve the purposes, and they're the one that do the performances. And there's a real desire that we enhance everything about you so that you have the highest level of capability of serving our customers, being everything you were created to be within the realm of our business organization. We want to motivate you to do well. And the motivation area is particularly an important area of mine because my doctoral dissertation was on job satisfaction and job dissatisfaction in the workplace. It was on motivation. There's two major motivations that we concern ourselves about. There's intrinsic, what's inside of you. And that's where we come back to doing a proper check to make sure you're the right fit for the organization. Are you extrinsically motivated? Are you intrinsically motivated? And are you extrinsically motivated? In other words, those two factors come together, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And we want people at a high level of motivation. And so the leadership communication challenge is there. We're always in organizations communicating purpose, communicating the issue of our personality, communicating our performance, communicating to people who we want to be at the highest capable level and are highly motivated. In regard to this whole realm, there are three important blocks that we look at. One is the duty that you and I have in regard to any work that we do. Whether it be a duty as a parent or as a husband or a wife or as a supervisor or as a worker, we all have duty. And it really becomes our calling, whatever that calling is. My duty is teaching. My calling is doing this. In fact, literally today, just before this class set started, I had received an email asking me if I'd be willing to teach next year, as in the fall of this coming year and spring of next year. And I said yes to both opportunities. Why? Because it's part of my calling. And what is involved in this is the cognitive domain of understanding. I am Curtis. I have a calling. And that calling involves a duty. And I passionately love doing it. And I will sacrifice, I will suffer for that cause, whatever it is. It could be any number. It could fit just being a parent. It can fit being in a professional career. It can fit anywhere. But ultimately, we want our lives to count. We want our lives to mean something. And so we need to understand, what's that calling? And you need to spend time, maybe you have, understanding what you desire to do. And then cognitively desire to, and have that calling and make it it's cognitive. It's so built into your very being, and it becomes your duty, becomes what you breathe. I remember when, for the first time, I ever seriously thought about professional teaching. A professor of mine sent me back an evaluation form when I was in my bachelor's degree regarding an assignment that I had done, and told me that he said, I really need to make peace with God in regard to my calling. And he said, I've got a list of 4 things. One was in leadership, another was in counseling, another was in the area of, I can't remember, administration. And then the other was in the area of teaching. And I went back to him and I read this. I said, what do you mean by teaching? He said, doing what I'm doing. And we talked about it for a few minutes. I remember driving home from the college that I went to back to where we were staying in Vancouver on Knight Street in an apartment back then. I could hardly wait for Joanne to come home. I knew what my calling was. In my mind, cognitively, I knew it's become my duty. There needs to be warmth in the realm of doing your calling, doing your duty. And that really involves the issue of caring. And how do we show caring? And there are many ways we might show caring. One of the ways I show caring, although I didn't seem to do it too well today, I got my date wrong, but is trying to be very organized and having things laid out very, very carefully. Having PowerPoints that are easy for you to follow. You all have this PowerPoint, by the way. It's part of the package I had sent you earlier. That's one way I show caring. I've also showed caring, for instance, in one of my students in, I'm just checking here, I won't name the person, but in this class, we have a student who's not here right now. She's from another country. And in her country, there's a war taking place, a war within their own country. And sometimes it's been hard for her to get online just because of that. And so she has her first paper in, but she's having trouble because she couldn't get PowerPoint to do research, not PowerPoint, could not get online on Google to do some research because of what's happening in the country. And she said, could I have a few more days to finish up? Well, of course. I wrote her back and said, absolutely, I understand. I care about my students. Listen, if you don't have your paper done, but you have a reason, tell me. Okay? I am a caring person. I still have to put a grade in, so I do need that done. But tell me. And that touches on the affective domain. The cognitive domain deals with the head. The affective domain deals with the heart. And when we are involved in whatever it is in life that's important to us, the cognitive important and the affective important. And in both cases, you're going to experience sacrifice and suffering. You have no choice, but that's part of what life is about. The last block is the issue of engagement. You have duty and you have warmth, and you engage in your duty, and you do it with warmth and you do it with care. You engage people. I'm engaging you. I know I'm lecturing, and sometimes lecturing is tired. Believe me, if we were meeting live, I still do lecture, I still would use this, but we also have exercises we do. We just cannot do that in this class because it doesn't make sense online. And I apologize for that. But there's engagement in your work, engagement with the people in your work, and there's connecting with people. That's really important. And this deals with the behavioral domain. So the cognitive domain is the head, the affective domain is the heart, The behavioral is the hands. It's being involved in the life of people. And you do that through connecting and engaging. So all this involves communication. It involves communication. You cannot do your duty, have warmth, and engage without communication. And communication involves words, it involves body language, and it involves the sound of your voice, the tone of your voice. All these come together in a powerful way. I taught this course that I mentioned to you, where with this professor, that he said, the reason I keep having you do sacrifice and suffering is because you are the most qualified. So for several years, I had a few years, and this is not the most up-to-date facts here. I had the students do a little survey, very simple survey. Here are 8 important realities that you face when you are involved in a work situation, and especially in a leadership situation. Leadership, there's a cost. Whether it's as a parent, you're a leader. Whether you're the owner of a business, you're a leader, or a manager, or if you're in a department and you are the head person there, you're in leadership. We will all find moments of leadership at some point. And it's a joy to do it, but it's not always easy. And so with these students that I taught this course with, were all working on a Master of Arts degree. And I would have about 30 students in my class in the fall every year. I taught the course 15 years in a row in the fall. And then I also taught 3 or 4 more sections in the spring over the 15 years. So I taught it about 18 or 19 times with one class that I taught the whole class with, and it was a Korean worldview. And then I taught this one section with a class that had the done in the August. So I actually was involved in 2 sections of it. One was completely mine. This one, the other one, I just did it with the issue of sacrifice, suffering. So I taught this course 15, 17 years for the one group and about the same length for the other group. So I've taught this section a lot of years. So several years ago, I started, I asked my students, would you be willing to do a short survey? Very simple. And on a piece of paper were these 8 realities of leadership: self-sacrifice, loneliness in leadership, fatigue from leadership, criticism when you're in leadership, rejection by people when you lead, the pressure, perplexity of life that you experience, because leadership means there's pressure and there'll be strange moments, the cost to others, like your family or friends or whomever else. And then the reaction to adverse opinion, because the reality is not everybody's going to agree with everything you think or the way you think we should go. That's just not going to happen. So I simply asked my students, they had this piece of paper with these 8, and I said to them, it didn't have the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just had the 8 of them there. And then it had a little line over to the right side. And I said to my students, please rank these as to the number 1 is the absolute worst. If you could not experience one of these, which one would you take out? Make that number 1. What would be the second worst? The third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and 8th worst, okay? So I asked them to do this, and I calculated them, and I came out, so self-sacrifice, you give up something. Think of yourself as a parent. You give up a lot to be a parent. Loneliness, you could be with people, but you're lonely because when you're in leadership, sometimes people kind of hold you at a distance. Fatigue, it's tiring. We all know what that's like, and especially during COVID-19, we've known fatigue as people. Criticism, we could all experience moments of criticism. Rejection, that's painful, not fun, where people will actually want nothing to do with you. The pressure and perplexity, it goes with leadership. The cost to others. around you, how they pay a price because of your responsibility. And reaction to adverse opinion. It's not fun to have people say, I disagree with you. That's not a fun moment. Well, I want to show you how they ranked these. This was at the time of 338 students. I've had over 600 students over time, but the numbers, interestingly, they have lined up pretty much this way, or very, very close to this way. One or two have changed. Okay, with sacrifice and suffering, I had a whole statistical analysis done. I won't explain how I did that. So if you put something as a 1, let's say this is the worst, it got the most points. It got 8 points. If you put one that was the second worst, it got 7 points. Okay, so don't worry about this. The higher the number they go, the more suffering is involved. Self-sacrifice was the least suffering. It was the lowest that they could get. The very lowest number you could have gotten, if everybody put an 8 for it, that meant that 8 was only worth 1. Don't worry about what that means. But 2.31, that's lower. Fatigue was 3.62. And by the way, in my one class where I did this, where I taught the whole class, because I actually taught all 8 sections for 15, 16 years, something like that. I had doctors of medicine in my class. I had doctors of dentistry. I had people who had their master's degree in other fields. I had people who were nurses, people who were counselors, people who were religious leaders. I had a whole string of professional people. They were all professionals. Just about everyone was already involved in professional work. Some worked with adults, some with youth, some with children. Most were married, but not all. So fatigue was not put high. They accepted that that was a level of suffering that does happen, but it was not the worst for them. Pressure and perplexity was number 3, going downwards, okay, at 3.9. It wasn't fun, it wasn't easy, but that number was something that they would accept because pressure goes with life. Reaction to adverse opinion was at 4.15. So you can see the numbers are slowly crawling upward. And 4.15 is, you can see it's about the halfway point. And so that means it's starting to, you feel pain there. Loneliness was 4.38. Loneliness, 4.38. And the students, we talked about loneliness, and they said that loneliness was not a fun experience, but it was a reality that was experienced. When you're in leadership, you deal with that. Cost to others, 5.45. They said that this was very high, that their spouses experienced stress from the work that they saw that we had to do in leadership. And it brought stress and pressure on them, upon the children, upon other important people. Criticism, 5.46. So criticism, cost to others, went back and forth between the two. Which one would be number 2 or 3? Criticism's not fun. I don't know about you, but if somebody comes up, starts criticizing you, it's a gut hit. It kicks you. It's like getting kicked in the gut. It hurts. The highest one was rejection, being literally rejected, 6.57. There's no number statistically close to rejection. You can see that cost to others and criticism, there's a 0.01 difference. There's no statistical difference between those two at all. But with rejection, it was totally separated all by itself as the most painful one. Why am I sharing this? In leadership, you're going to experience sacrifice and suffering. You're suffering and sacrifice. It's going to happen. And to understand the arenas where that will happen can become valuable for you. Now, I have sent you, I believe I've sent you this. If I did not, you can ask me for this PowerPoint. Check the PowerPoints. If I haven't sent you this one, ask me for it, and I will be glad to send that to you. I want to talk for just a couple of moments here on the issue of the brain. I'm not a brain surgeon. In fact, as you know, um, I had brain injury when I was a kid, and I knew what that was like to have a brain that had been injured. So I've been there. If you've had a concussion, you will understand what it is to have the fog, for your brain not to be as clear. And the brain is a reality that we face. So I want to just talk for very few minutes about the brain in the realm, because it impacts our suffering, which impacts our capacity to communicate. Here's a picture of all the factors in the brain itself that we have to look at. And I'm just looking up a little section here. Um, okay, the fMRI stands for the functional magnetic resonance imaging. It really has the capacity, and this is a machine they can use, and they can look at the brain. We're going to look at an actual shading of what happens in the brain in a moment here. But these are all parts of the brain. I'm not going to go through it all with you at all. But the brain damage that I ended up having was in the front part of the brain, which is called the prefrontal. It's that yellowy one to the upper left corner. And that's where that part of the brain is the executive director of the whole brain. It is what sends the signals to the other parts of brains that do other important things. So you can see all the parts to, not all, but many of the parts of the brain and what's involved in this. Um, in regard to when we have stress, when we're under pressure, it impacts the brain, and it brings us at times a problem, and we can lose our equilibrium in the midst of that. And we need to have people that we are able to communicate with. If you're married, your spouse. If not, a doctor, a counselor, or somebody that's a friend that you're able to be honest with, because our equilibrium, if we keep getting criticism, it eventually can do damage to the brain. It can throw our equilibrium. And so stress does that to us, and we need to have outlets to prevent that from happening. Um, there is cortex and suffering that takes place, especially in the prefrontal cortex, is directly connected to what takes place in the brain. If you are in a work situation where there's no rest, it can create permanent damage. We need breaks. Like, for instance, the break I take is an exercise break. I walk. Uh, my goal is to walk over 6,000 kilometers a year. And I've presently been walking, I think this is in my fifth or sixth year now. And I'm wanting to walk the equivalent of the circumference of the earth, which is 40,075 kilometers. Based on what I've been doing so far over the last few years, a year from now, I will reach that goal. What does that do? It allows the brain to rest. And without that, you're in trouble. We need to have, by the way, communication with other people is another form of bringing rest, where you do things together to get away from. The impact, it impacts the wiring of the brain. Research shows that stress impacts the wiring of the brain, and it can impact it for negative reasons, which makes it very, very problematic. So we need to be able to rest, to have friends, to unwind, to communicate about other things other than. And right now, I was just reading an article in a magazine that I get, Scientific American, talking about the fact that because of COVID-19, people have become fixated on media and listening to all the negativity that's happening, and it's impacting our brains negatively. And so we need to get away from that because it's not helping. And how do we do that? Getting away with people, communicating our frustrations. I just yesterday was telling Joanne that I fully realize now that I've been fixated on what has been happening in the United States with the election, and it has negatively impacted me, and we need to break from that. So here's a hypothesis that I have. Okay, we need to understand that we are involved in an area of having good mood issues. We need that. And if we don't have good mood issues, it damages the brain. It's hard to make proper decisions when we live with just stress, stress, stress. We need outlets. And one of the greatest outlets is communication with somebody important or somebody's important. For me, not only people, but with God. The implications for leadership are very, very striking. We need to understand that emotional intelligence is critical. And if we don't have healthy emotional intelligence, bad decisions will be made and we'll be in deep trouble. We need to be able to make good decisions. And if we have brain damage through stress, then we make bad decisions. That's why we need to spend so much time in good communication. Communication becomes the absolute umbrella of stress, but it also becomes really what captures the stress factors in our lives. We need people and places where we're able to talk to about. Here is two images from an fMRI, which is a functional magnetic resonance imaging. These are actually taken off an imagery. So this is an actual brain, and it shows what the brain is like. The bright colors indicate high activation. This brain, the blues, the yellow, the orange, are all signs of high activity. And this means this is healthy. And to get high activation significantly involves communication, talking with somebody, getting it out in the open, listening to somebody, and sharing. It's so critical. If you're in leadership, leadership needs this because of the stress factors that I showed you, those 8 factors. So we need people we are able to share with. The bottom picture, the chronic pain, you see all the gray, only a little bit of orange and a little tiny bit of yellow. The dark colors indicate deactivation. It indicates that nothing as much is happening in this brain, and it's under so much stress. It's chronic and it's unhealthy. This person is in deep trouble and needs to have communication activity in a positive manner take place. Well, I wanted to share that with you simply because, and I have actually much more to the presentation that I'm not doing today. Obviously, it's not for that purpose, but it really is an important area in communication. And so I wanted to get that out to you. I'm just checking a piece of paper my wife gave me here. One more thing here, if I can find it, and I can't. Oh, yes, here we are. Okay, I need you to do, I came up with an idea, and I need you to do me a favor. And I'm going to email you, but I need you to respond to me. So if you would send me an email to CCONGO, that's my home address, at Shaw, SHAW.ca. So CONGO at Shaw, SHAW.ca. I want you to, your first part of the exam, okay, that we're going to have will take place on the second. Next, a week today. Today's Wednesday. So on Monday, I'm going to prepare you for the exam. The first part of the exam will be on Wednesday. It'll be 1 or 2 questions. It's an essay questions, and I'm going to go through. I'm not going to give you the actual essay questions, but I'll give you a sense of what it's like, so you're ready. What I need for you, the final exams are on December 4 through 16. I am going to ask you to give me a day and a time you want to take the second part of the exam. I want to do it in 2 parts, so you have a chance just to work on one and then forget it and then come back and do it again. I'll write you an email, but please send me an email for ccongo@shaw.ca and tell me between December 4 and December 16 what day and what time you would like to take the second part of the exam. Okay, so I'll be writing an email about that to you. So I'm just reminding you about that. Now, just a reminder, and we're done here. I need that first paper if you haven't handed it in. There's 4 or 5 of you that haven't handed it in. And more of you haven't handed in the second short little paper, or if you want to do the video, you can do either one. You can do a 7 to 10 minute video, put it on YouTube, send it to me, or you can do it as a short paper of 1,000 words. I need that, and I need it fairly soon, obviously. The final exam will be on December 2, and then you're going to choose the other part, and I'll be talking to you about that on Monday. Monday is our last day meeting like this, and we're going to be just doing preparation for the final exam. That's it. Okay, so if you have any questions, even from today, please email me. Email me at ccongo@shaw.ca and just ask me questions, okay? That would be an easier way to handle it than trying to do it here in class. So I am finished, and I am going to shut down my